Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're learning how to land your first sales job even without experience. We're joined by Bill Becker, a seasoned sales professional turned author. With over 35 years in marketing and technology sales, Bill has mastered the art of breaking into sales without traditional experience. In fact, he wrote the book on it. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Rob. Happy to be here.
We're very glad to have you here. So, Bill, let's start by having you tell us a little more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
All right. Well, since you said that I had 35 years of experience, I'd like to point out I started out when I was 9. So
we gathered. It's fine.
So yeah, I was a salesperson my entire career. I grew up wanting to be a veterinarian, and then realized I have to go to school how long? And said, all right, well, I'm going to take my love of music and become a radio DJ. Then I discovered they didn't make any money. So I did the next best thing, which is went into radio sales. Still got to hang out in the radio station every day and, still be creative. And I did that for about 16 years and then segued into technology sales. And right after 9/11, I was selling computer training at the time. And I had this state contract to retrain all the workers that had been laid off. Here in Oklahoma, that was really heavy on telecommunication workers. And I was just thinking, like, salespeople aren't getting laid off. Now that does happen today. We may get into that. But I started thinking, like, no one grows up wanting to be a salesperson. So that's when the idea of the job nobody dreams of first came about. And I would talk a little bit about that. I spoke at a national workforce convention in DC, but it wasn't until I got done raising 5 kids and retired that I really wanted to get out there and evangelize about sales careers, because I'm a big believer it's the most equitable career out there. Why? Because there's no barriers to entry, no experience, no education requirements. And part of me evangelizing is getting rid of the myths about sales careers. It's not about tricking people, high pressure sales. It's having conversations. That's it.
That's what we preach to people, is all about having the conversation. And I think it's really interesting, sales, because it's one of the few, I was going to say professions, but careers that's a meritocracy, isn't it? Generally speaking, your success is based on how well you can do the job rather than how much you know and who you know.
That's why I loved it, and I never wanted to be in sales management. I mean, you go into sales to control your own destiny, right? If you're a sales manager, you got 6, 12 other people that you're managing, and they are controlling your future. And also, sales is the one job that you can make more money than your boss.
Yeah.
I mean, sales managers have a base and bonus plans. Salespeople, base, commission. And outside my very first job, the very first sales job, my hometown radio station, I've always made more money than, my boss.
Wow. So, Bill, you've mentioned it, your book alludes to it. How can someone with no previous sales experience get hired in a sales job?
Sure. That's one of the beauties of it is, so again, I'm going to talk about, what is sales? It's simply having a conversation. So I was in IT sales for many, many years, and I'm a dork. I obviously I knew more about the product when I retired than when I started, but I'm smart enough to know that, what I don't know, I go ask. And I always told people, I never sold anything. I found people who are already in the market for our service and then showed them why I was the best choice. And when you're going to have conversations, and if you're selling something technical, you're going to have technical engineers. You have to have some product knowledge. I don't mean that it's totally beyond that. So, but the idea of getting a job with no experience, and this is what I preach a lot to, and part of my, my speaking and my writing, is today you have both unemployment, you also have underemployment. And I can make not a great case, I can make a case that sometimes underemployment is worse than unemployment. If you don't have a job, at least you have some hope that, hey, I'm going to get a job at some point and everything's going to be all right. But if you're working 40 hours a week and you're busting your butt and you're just having problems making ends meet and you just don't see a great future for you and your family, that's soul crushing.
Yeah.
And it's those situations where you can go and do that. So the idea to go get a job that, without experience, first figure out, what do you want to sell? Your interests, your whatever. I will say, you don't have to be passionate about what you sell. And I use myself a little bit. I lived with this earlier. Almost 20 years in IT sales. I'm not a propeller head. I don't, I could barely spell SQL, but I love being, representing cutting edge technology, and I knew questions to ask. So whatever, you figure out what you want to sell. The next thing is, how do you go about doing it? You're not going to apply online. You're not going to talk to a recruiter. You're not going to go through HR. Why? Because you don't have any sales experience. They're not going to talk to you. They can only say no. You got to figure out someone who can say yes. And so that you're selling now. You're looking for a decision maker. And there's all kinds of ways to do that, especially today with the internet. Although I do talk a lot about sending a letter, going old school. Because if you send a letter to a decision maker, especially in a priority envelope, it's going to get read. And once you get in front of this person, I call it my come to Jesus speech. Is you go, Rob, this is what's been going on in my life. You can either talk about past mistakes or missed opportunities. And it's like, I just don't see a future for me, what I'm doing right now. I do see a great future for myself selling your product or service. All you need is one person to sit there and go, wow, I just hit the lottery. This person's going to be so motivated. What they don't know on product knowledge, I can teach them. But they're going to all the things you have to go through, they're going to go through it because they are dedicated. And you'll have to produce at some point, but you're going to get a chance. And that's all you can ask. And you just proved you can get in front of a decision maker by doing that, by getting your job.
I want to pick up on that, but first I want to share from our audience. Bob Britton says, regarding sales management, John D. Rockefeller said, I would rather earn 1% off of 100 people's efforts than 100% off of my own efforts. So there's the counterpoint to sales leadership, I suppose.
Well, I can't imagine managing 100 people.
No. So picking up on what you were saying, what are some examples of people in other careers who successfully transition to sales? Do you see any particular careers where that is a trend and where success tends to happen?
Sure. Project management is one. I mean, because that's kind of what sales is, especially when you're in everything I talk about is professional selling. So if you're talking, business to business, that you're talking, you could have up to over a year that the transaction takes place. So what I sold IT services, talking to the decision maker, but in parallel, you have to talk to legal, you have to talk to security, you have to talk to data privacy people, have to talk to purchasing. And so you're actually managing a small project. And so I've seen people come in that have no sales knowledge, no necessarily product knowledge, but they were great project managers. Another career field, and I've really been promoting this, are teachers. That I would try to try to keep this non-political, but teachers are going through a rough time right now across the country, and they're leaving the profession in droves. But they have amazing skill set. They're great communicators. They're great project managers, time management. They are great to go into sales. Another part, a group that I'm working with, are people who've been incarcerated. And the reason that sales is good, so they already have a tough go of finding a good job, right?
Sure.
But if that person gets in front of a decision maker and says, hey, these are some mistakes I made in my life. And as you can imagine, I got very few good opportunities out there. You give me the shot, and it'll be the best decision you ever made.
It's a very compelling argument, isn't it? Very compelling argument.
It can change lives.
Yeah, and one of the things that I often find when we're coaching people is that young salespeople feel that they haven't got anything to offer. They feel that they haven't got anything that they can bring. Well, it'd be great if you were dealing with Bill because he's got 30 years experience of this, but it's my first kind of crack at this, and I can't use the experience card to help me close the business. And I always think that there's nothing more attractive than saying, you're going to be my first client. So you imagine how hard I'm going to work to make you happy. I mean, that's an incredibly attractive proposition, isn't it? This kind of, I'm going to be indebted to you. I'm going to make this work no matter what it takes. Because one of the things that is largely missing from people that are out there in the working world is that level of commitment, isn't it?
It is. And Adam, you really hit the head. And when I said earlier, when I don't sell anything, I find people who are already in the market and then tell them why I'm the best option. I really meant me more so than the company, because that's what I bring. I can't tell you the number of times that I've focused on me, and I'm going to let the audience know. Here's the secret sauce to being successful in sales: replying quickly to requests. It sounds crazy, but every single week of my career, I got thanked. I got applauded for how fast I responded to an email or a voicemail. And at first I'm going, this is strange. Kind of thought that was my job. But in the end, it's like, okay, a lot of salespeople don't do this. This is a way for some dork to stand out. And I'm happy to. I actually had a separate folder in my Outlook to collect all these praises, if you will. And so to your point, if you're brand new, then you can talk about that, because really thinking about it, it's less than buying a product or service, but they're putting their faith in the salesperson that they have. That's why I'm not a fan of what is happening in a lot of sales today, where someone signs a client and then it goes over to another person within the company. Think it from the customer's point of view, because they hate it. If you're working with Bill for 9 months and you traded emails 3 times a day for 9 months, you signed, said, I believe in Bill, I believe in the company, and then you get moved over to somebody else. Not that the other person, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, there is. It's Rob. It's the other person.
I didn't want to talk about Rob. But, but think, because you know what, in the end, and especially on big enterprise sales, they're not buying the product or service. They're not buying the features or benefit. They're buying peace of mind.
They're buying your promise. That's what they're buying, because they only know whether the product does what you say it's going to do at the point that they've bought it. So up until that point, it's just your words. And yeah, I mean, we are always saying to people, you are the secret sauce. You are the most attractive thing you have. And when people lead with, well, you should buy our product because it's got these features, it's like every company says that. Well, this is the really important feature. And every company says that as well.
Right.
And we're market leading. And every company says that as well. But when you say, it's me, look me in the eyes, I'm going to help you sort this problem out. That's the thing, isn't it? That's the magic.
It truly is, because think about this. We spend more waking hours at work than we do with our families. And I had customers become very, very close friends, just as a natural extension. That, I talk in my book that, I had my dog who I had for 16 years, and the last 10 years of my career, I was able to work from home. So when I have a video call with a client or a coworker, wasn't, hey, Bill, how are you doing? How's our boy doing? Here over the bed over on my left. And so they want to feel good that, because especially in IT sales, right? It's not when, it's not if, it's when something goes wrong. You know what? And am I going to feel good? Is Bill going to disappear on me? Are we going to? And so, yeah, that's why the personal touch. That's why salespeople are never going to be replaced by AI.
So if sales is the job that nobody dreams of, what are some of the myths about being in sales that we should probably start to break down?
Well, as I said earlier, the first thing is it's not high pressure. You're not trying to trick people into buying something they may or may not need. You think of Boiler Room, you think, other movies and TV shows that's not how real sales happens today. Kind of, on an extension of that is how sales different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Prospects are a lot more educated. And so when they come to you, they've already done their research. They want to talk to a human that can answer questions. And so it's just a conversation. And one of the most important things you can bring to the table, because they already know what your product can do, they want to know what can go wrong. When I sold when I sold computer training, my instructors did a lot of consulting on the side. They did a lot of SharePoint consulting. And most of the consulting was fixing someone else's mistakes. The guys came up with a verb. They go, oh, you've been share-pooed. But when they talked about these things in the class, people really sat up and listened, like, hey, all right, I know the lecture out of the official Microsoft curriculum, but here, this is street knowledge on what not to do. And sharing what not to do is often way more important than sharing what to do.
Yeah, a really great comment from Bob, the last one, about show Gary Glenn Ross to every seller as a cautionary tale of how not to sell. It's funny because for many years I thought that was the best sales training video. It's awful behavior, but it does show what true tenacity and what battling adversity is like. But now, yeah, it's incredibly out of place. And I think because nowadays everybody is a click away, aren't they? So I can look at you, I can look at Rob, I can think, well, I like you more than I like Rob, therefore I'll go with you. Even if going with you is just you being the starting point. Mm-hmm. The fact is that people can make that comparative analysis of you and your competitors very, very easily these days.
For sure. But when you talked about tenacity, that's the beauty of it. That is important. Anyone can do that. You can only lose if you give up. You get in front of a decision maker, for your first sales job, and it doesn't work out. Spoiler alert, no just means no today. They could call back next week. The biggest sale I ever made, they had told higher ups, it's like, no. And so I came and reached out to them a few months later, told them why I was different. Kind of like the thing you were talking about, Adam. It's like, hey, I'm not necessarily new, but this is how I'm different. And I knew one of the things that they had said why they went with someone else was the quickness on the follow-up. So yeah, I can't think of the number of sales I've made in my career that it didn't happen today. The timing wasn't right. Some internal things change. But if you don't, it's corny, but it's true. If you don't give up, you can never lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a comment from the audience. Jensen Abbott says, or no means next opportunity. There we go.
Yeah. Hi, Jensen. Yeah, and I think that the reality of sales is that you need to you're going to get knocked down a few times, and you need to pick yourself up and dust yourself down. But absolutely, the point of this is about having a conversation. You have a chat to somebody, you see where it goes. If there's chemistry there, you're in with a shout. If there's no chemistry there, you're not in with a shout, and you need to move on and look at the next opportunity. Because if you don't want to work with me, it doesn't matter how badly I want to work with you or how good the product is, you're not going to work with me. I often think that this is like in the implementation phase of whatever it is that you're doing. You're going to be locked in a meeting room with this person for 6 weeks straight. That'll be the worst 6 weeks of your life if you hate them. Alternatively, it could be a joy being locked in a room with them for 6 weeks because they're someone that you really get along with and you really enjoy their company. And actually, life's too short to put up with the crap, isn't it? You want to be doing stuff you like with people you like doing it with.
It's interesting that how you share that, Adam, because you know what? Here's something people may not realize, that there's times you're going to say no to the prospect. The prospect, or even a customer. We had a customer who was beating up our help desk, and the help desk are my people. The front facing of the company. So I said, you know what? We may not be the right fit for you guys anymore. And leaving us is not easy. It's not like you change a paper company and go across the street. It's months long trying to find another platform. Well, this client, blew a gasket, hunted down our CEO, told him, why Bill Becker was the worst person in the world. And CEO talks to me, and I said, this person's a bully. And the bully got fired. And so it works both ways, that you want to have a good relationship.
Absolutely. And I think that so often, the problem with sales as a career is that so often it's about closing the business today, not about closing the business when it's right. And that drives both the customer and the salesperson can drive them into a very uncomfortable place to be. So, Bill, what can I do that will make you sign today? Well, nothing, because we're under contract for another 3 months, or no, we haven't got the budget, or no, it needs to happen next year, or no, we're still evaluating. Oh, yeah. But suppose we were to do you a really good deal on this. It's like it's just really uncomfortable, and it's belittling for both parties, isn't it? But still, so many sales managers drive that as being the behavior which is required.
Well, it's so true. And we see this a lot. And I see some threads on LinkedIn. And, another great thing about being, in sales, you can fire your company and go work someplace else. That, there's things like you mentioned, that are being driven. It's more than, the sales managers, usually ownership, investors and things like that. So that's the beauty that, I had two totally different things. I sold radio ads and I sold IT services. And so you can sell whatever. And you can, and I talk about that when I have a couple of things where I talk about getting your first sales job, but also sales, you can go out and create your own job and sell it to the company of your choice. And I did that in the second part of, my career, actually kind of in the middle of it. And I transferred over from, straight radio selling. So the idea is that, maybe it doesn't work with the company or the industry that you're in, but if you're passionate, you can take that same skill set, and it is a skill, it is a talent, to another industry, to another company.
So how does one get their first sales job then? Because I've worked in organisations where the business development role is like the thin end of the wedge, and eventually you get you move over the fence into the sales department. But I can't help thinking that often the BD role, it's teaching people the wrong skills. And I've worked with loads and loads and loads of salespeople that are useless. And they're useless not because they can't sell or they can't administer or they can't close and they don't understand all of the methodologies, but simply because they're not good people. they're not able to actually form any kind of human bond with the person that engenders trust and love between the two of them.
Well, I think a big part of that is mindset. And what I'm talking about is, for a long time, sales has been positioned as the job of last resort. I think back when we're raising kids, so I'm always interested in talking to different salespeople, right? So I'd interviewed for an article early on in different salespeople, and talked to these early 20s making $100,000. This is like 2002, selling cars, just killing it. So when we went out to go find a car, my wife and I was talking to a salesperson, probably early 40s, really well dressed. He was basically apologizing. He goes, "Yeah, this is just something I'm doing until something better comes along." Yet someone across town's a guy half his age killing it. And so it's, but you don't have to be a people person. I want to, that's really important, because as much as I'm self-deprecating and I joke about it, off of here, I'm pretty quiet. And I mentioned project management. I know a good friend who's killing it in sales. Not as personable as a lot of people you would think, but he was a tremendous project manager, and now is just making obscene amount of money.
Bill, this has been great. Thank you very much. How can people get in touch with you? How can they learn more?
Sure. So a couple places, thejobnobodydreamsof.com. You got my backstory and some more. You can also go to academy.thejobnobodydreamsof.com. You can see a couple courses I have there. Both of them have the first lessons for free. You get to see a little bit more of my personality in the opening videos. I make fun of myself, just like I did when I was selling. And so, yeah, I would love it. JobNobodyDreamsOf.com or academy.thejobnobodydreamsof.com.
Awesome. Thank you. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. Scan the QR code on screen or visit us at SalesTV.live/newsletter. This has been another edition of Sales TV Live. On behalf of the panelists and everyone at Sales TV, to our guests and to our audience, thank you for being an active part in today's conversation, and we'll see you next time.